Welcome back, guys, or if you're new here, this is Automotive Anonymous, and today I have a really fun side-by-side comparison of two of the most affordable small SUVs that you can currently buy, and it just so happens that they're both Chevrolets. So on the left, we have the Trax. This one specifically is in sterling gray metallic. It looks really nice, especially on a sunny day like today, and it's an LT trim level, so it's kind of the middle of the road for the Trax. This one, after destination delivery and all the options it has, would be about $27,000. And on the right, we have the Trailblazer, but for 2026, it's about the same price as it was last year. So this one is an LS in Summit White paint, and because of destination delivery and the two options that it has, it's about a $25,000 vehicle. So this will not be an exact apples to apples as far as trim levels are concerned, but the purpose of this video is to show you more about the importance of the actual models as they relate. How does the Trailblazer stack up to the Trax? Does the Trax cost as much as the Trailblazer for good reason now? We're gonna find out a lot of interesting things, and if you get anything out of this side-by-side comparison video, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions below, subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, huge thanks to Twin Falls Chevrolet in Southern Idaho for letting me borrow these vehicles for the day. I'm gonna link them below if you're interested because they sell below MSRP. They'll ship anywhere in the country, but also huge thanks to our sponsor today, Lasfit. They are a phenomenal company, but more about them in just a few minutes. Let's dive right into this side-by-side review. But before we get too carried away going through the interior of these vehicles, I do want to mention a few similarities and a few differences that you should probably be aware of if you are considering one of these. And since I just did a full review of each of them, although I'm not sure if those videos have been posted, they probably have, so you can look on my channel for them. There's a few new differences for 2026 that I've noticed that I haven't in the past, and I find them quite interesting. So both of these vehicles are assembled in Korea. That is South Korea. They both sell over 100,000 units every single year in the United States market, although the Trax has really gotten popular. For 2024, after the redesign, it sold 200,000 units, or twice as many as the 2023 model year, which I'm really not surprised because this thing looks quite substantial compared to the first generation. But beyond all that, these two examples, I know we're not going to get too far into the trim levels, but they actually have the exact same payload, 893 pounds. They are different shapes, different sizes, but they actually have the exact same total cargo capacity, both behind the second row and when the second row is laid down. They also have roughly the same ground clearance, at least within 0.2 of an inch. These specific examples are both front-wheel drive with a turbocharged 3-cylinder engine, although their transmissions are completely different, which we're going to talk about under the hood in just a minute. But there's a lot that these vehicles have in common, but there are a lot of differences too. The Trailblazer can be optioned with all-wheel drive. That is a $2,000 option. And the most loaded out trim level of each of these for the Trax, it would start at about $27,000 before destination delivery and options. But the Trailblazer, it actually can be loaded out to over $32,000, or an example I drove recently was up to $35,000. So this is going to be mostly about the models, how they compare side by side, but let's pop the hoods and see what it looks like under there. Under the hood of both of these vehicles, it's going to look very similar because a lot of the peripheral items, the reservoirs, the computer, the battery, most of that is basically in the exact same location. The only thing that's different is the engine. And so we need to start with the Trax because that's kind of the lower end of the spectrum for the powertrain. This is only offered with one powertrain, a 3-cylinder turbo. The turbo is on the back. It peaks out at 137 horsepower, which might not sound like much, but the sound of these engines when they are running, there's a little bit of a natural tick to the engine. That's not a concern. That actually sounds kind of fun in my experience with the 4-cylinder. I think that's just how the engine is balanced. But 137 horsepower that then goes through a 6-speed automatic transmission is what you get. And when you want to know what this does 0 to 60, well, in my area at about a mile above sea level, I'm going to show you on the screen what this did just the other day when I was filming these side by side. And now if we take a look at the Trailblazer, you'll find something interesting. First of all, everything but the engine looks the exact same under the hood. Honestly, the engine cover is slightly different, but overall it looks very similar. The layout is about the same. There's, again, a lot of DNA shared. You can see the catalytic converter, the O2 sensor, the turbo housing right there. Everything is pretty straightforward. There's a lot of room to work on either of these vehicles under the hood because, again, those engines aren't that massive. But this one is a 1.3 liter, so it makes 155 horsepower, about 18 horsepower more than the 1.2 liter. But although this one is front-wheel drive, one of the things I learned is that this 1.3 liter has a CVT transmission. The 9-speed, that's actually only offered on the 1.3 liter with the all-wheel drive. So it's interesting to me that this front-wheel drive 1.3 does not have the same 6-speed that this has. It is a CVT instead. And then if you do want the 1.2 liter engine on this one, you don't get the 6-speed that has. You also get the CVT. So it's kind of interesting that the transmissions are different. Meanwhile, the rest of everything else under the hood looks very similar. So as we take a look at the differences, I do find it interesting that on the same road, basically the same time of day, the 1.3 liter turbo with a CVT in the slightly heavier Trailblazer was actually a true 1.7 seconds faster than the Trax. I wonder how much of that is the engine, how much of that could potentially be the transmission having the CVT versus the 6-speed. I'm wondering. It is pretty interesting because that's only a little bit of displacement, 100 cc or 1/10 of a liter. And the Trailblazer does on average weigh a couple hundred pounds more than the Trax, in the low 3,000 pound ballpark, compared to the Trax is about 3,000 pounds because it is just a front wheel drive smaller hatch. But then beyond that, the Trailblazer again gets one better MPG. Both on the highway and around town, it's rated for about 29 city, 33 on the highway, whereas the Trax, the way it's configured, is 28 and 32. But an interesting difference comes to their size. The Trailblazer is actually about 4 inches taller than the Trax, so maybe a little bit worse on aerodynamics, but it's also 4 inches shorter, and the wheelbase is 2 inches shorter than the Trax. So ultimately, like I mentioned before, and as you'll see soon enough, the cargo capacity is about the same, but the size, the footprint of these vehicles actually varies a little bit. And then it's kind of funny that the smaller looking Trax actually has a larger gas tank. It's 14 gallons compared to 13.2 on the Trailblazer. But again, because of the discrepancy in MPG, it does about the same. And then both of these have a 225/60/17 tire. Neither one has a steel wheel, which I appreciate. And one of the two options that this $25,000 Trailblazer has is a spare tire, which does come with the Trax. So it's kind of interesting. They're different brands. This Continental has about 8/32 of tread. Meanwhile, the Dynapro, the hand-cooked tire on the Trax, has about 9/32 of tread. And now that we're finally going to talk about the interior of these vehicles, we are going to start with the hatches because these have the same amount of cargo capacity. When the seats are up, as they currently are for the second row, you have roughly 25 cubic feet on each. And then when you fold down the seats, you have roughly 54. 25 is a little bit better than most subcompact crossovers. A lot of them, like the Crosstrek or the CX-30, those come in at only about 20 to 21 feet. But when you drop down the seats, you have about the same as the Crosstrek or the HRV or some of the other ones that are on the more competitive side. But you will notice that the hatch openings, they look pretty different. The Trailblazer does look a little bit easier to get your stuff into. It's a wider opening mouth. It's not angled the same way as the Trax, especially where the Trax, if we start to come around to the side, you'll notice just how much sharper of an angle it is to get to the second half. So you are going to have to stack your stuff a little bit differently in the Trax than the Trailblazer. But remember guys, to use all of your cargo capacity, you do have to stack stuff up. You're going to have to stack it to the roof technically to use that full space. But something I've noticed about both of these vehicles, something that they're lacking, not just in the back, but the middle and the front, is where's the cargo mats? Where's the protection? So today we are going to talk about our channel sponsor, Lasfit, a company that's well known for making quality materials, especially making very quality floor mats, cargo mats, truck bed mats, and lighting upgrades, which this vehicle specifically really needs a lot of to get rid of all the halogens and the incandescents. But Lasfit actually makes a very quality product at a very competitive price, and especially if you use my discount code of anything on their website, AA20, until the end of the year, you get 20% off an already extremely competitive price. So after playing around on the website, looking at what a full set of mats cost for either of these vehicles, to again have the cargo protected, have the middle where your children are going to sit, where they're going to be spilling their ice cream cones and their milkshakes, or the very front where you are going to have some dirty feet, especially in the wintertime, and maybe you'll spill your own milkshake too. You know what guys? The way I configure it, it's only around $150 for all those mats. All that protection. And if we do take a look up front, because this one does not have the upgraded all-weather rubber mats, which really don't have a lot more surface area than what you get here with the cloth ones, they're kind of insufficient. They don't even cover the dead pedal. They stop before the dead pedal where you're resting your dirty, filthy foot. Do you want that thing to be disgusting? Probably not. What about up here if your foot slips off the brake pedal, which hopefully it doesn't, but you're gonna have that carpet unprotected. What about the sides? If you really do drop a big drink or your kids throw something from the back seat and it lands up here on the floorboard, first of all, you're gonna be fiddling around to worry about it. You could cause an accident by fiddling around. But if you have the Lasfit mats, you're probably not gonna be fiddling around because you know you're protected. You have coverage. They roll up on the side. None of the milkshake is gonna leak anywhere other than the floor mats, which can easily be washed out. And that's why we're gonna have Lasfit mats for our cars, because it's a brand that you can trust. It's a brand that actually cares about you, the consumer, and they're keeping prices extremely affordable, especially if you use the code AA20, which I highly recommend you do. But with that said, let's move on to the rest of the cargo area. Otherwise, I think the hatch is open to about the same height. So if you do have a lower roof in your garage, just be careful of that. Or if you are a taller individual, be careful that you don't bonk your head on that either. But the back of the Trailblazer really doesn't offer a whole lot else. It does look like maybe a slide could go in here for some protection, kind of like what comes standard on this. But then you have a very poor dim incandescent that could be upgraded with a Lasfit bulb. You have a little bit of storage back here. You have a couple tie downs on each corner. And then under here is the optional spare tire. And then the tools to change it, the scissor jack, all that stuff should be underneath. There's a lot of storage under here. And then one of the cool things is you can adjust the floor height on this Trailblazer. So you can have it lower, but then keep in mind, I'm not sure how much weight you can put on that adjustable floor. And then if it's in the lower position, there is a big gap between that and having the seats down. So I don't know that this is necessarily going to be the best car camping vehicle. And then the Trax, it is a little bit longer. When you lay down the seats, you have a similar setup. But then you have a spare tire under here with your tire changing tools. You can see there's less carpet, but really good looking seam sealer all around. You also have a tie down, an incandescent that needs to be upgraded, and then child safety tethers basically everywhere. They should be on the back of these seats, but then also on the second row, you have the two for each side, which is really nice. And then I would say it's pretty easy to throw down the hatch on both of these. Do they feel about the same? Yeah, they feel about the same. And as we hop into the interior, it is worth mentioning on the approach that both of these vehicles have the old school pointy antenna. They do not have a shark fin. The Trax does have the sporty lowered roof rails, and then this one does have blind spot monitoring, but no turn signals on the mirror or anything. And the Trailblazer does not have blind spot monitoring, but they both have bright LED headlights and adaptive cruise. And in fact, I'll turn on the headlights right here so you can see it. They look pretty good even in the middle of the day. Door panel has all the cheaper Chevy materials that age really well. They hold up, they're easy to clean. Honestly, you can't knock it too bad for being a $27,000 car. And then you have a slightly softer touch, but kind of grippy armrest and a nice door card. Otherwise, not a whole lot to talk about here. Again, the floor mats need to be upgraded, but the dashboard, the materials, it all looks very similar. You do have a few nice accents on this LT trim level. You have the spot to turn on the dials and to change the brightness on the display. Rubber pedals, manually adjusted seats with airbags, no sunroof or anything, but honestly, it's about what you pay for. It's a pretty nice approach overall. And for not having a lot of seat bolstering, I actually think these seats are nice. And I'm not going to complain about having manual seats. They weigh less, so the vehicle's a little bit lighter. They're less likely to break, fewer parts that go wrong. And then you still have a very nice entryway. You have the turn signal, you have the wiper blade. You do have the big screens, super reflective, not my favorite, but they are kind of cool. You can change a few of the controls. You can go through a number of things in here, but this screen is kind of the poverty screen. It doesn't have as many things as the fancier things, like say a high country Silverado is gonna have a lot more software into the infotainment. This, for instance, an example of that, you have a whole button. One of your 5 main buttons is dedicated to just turning off traction control. A button that should be physical, and right there, the horn, it's really high pitched, especially when the sound waves bounce off the wall. But you have adaptive cruise. Just remember to turn on lane keeping assist. You have auto start stop, the backup camera. Clarity is pretty good. It takes up the whole screen, so it doesn't feel like you're getting skimped out on there. You have a volume knob. I actually have had these AC controls on for quite a while. The vehicle is nice and cold because it is hot, especially where this is getting baked in the sun. You have an electronic parking brake, some cup holders, and just a tiny bit of storage right there. Otherwise, you have another incandescent light that needs to be upgraded, and there's nothing on the vanity mirror. Even at $27,000, there is not a light. But with that said, let's turn this off and we'll hop into the Trailblazer. I think the biggest thing I notice as the difference is the roof is very parallel to the ground and it extends a lot more. So again, it's 4 inches shorter. The wheelbase is a little bit shorter too, but the height is about 4 inches more at the peak than this, especially as the roof line gets carried out. So it might be more practical for storing a lot of items in this. The use of its room, I think, is a little bit better. And then front wheel drive LS with the CVT on this one. Nothing on the mirrors, they aren't even painted. But you do have some nice black paint on the A-pillar. Nothing on the door handle, no proximity key features like you have on this LT. That is a nice feature to have, but is it worth hundreds of dollars just to pull the key out of your own pocket? I don't know. And then if anything, this door panel, I would say looks just about as nice. You still have some glossy black material, you still have an upgraded door card, but then the rest of it is the cheaper Chevy plastics. Nothing to really talk about. The speaker system also sounds about the same in both of these. But this one, while having the same lighting options, it has a little storage pocket, which is cool. It also advertised that it has a knee airbag, the hood release. Again, the mats are kind of sad. These mats need to be upgraded, seriously. But then you actually have a pretty deep well where you could maybe hide some stuff under the seat rails, kind of cool. And then the overall entryway, it looks very similar to the Trax. No power moonroof or anything like that up top, but it's a pretty nice place for especially the price tag in today's economy. And then sitting inside here, the horn, it is extremely high pitched. You'll notice the same controls. The steering wheel looks basically the same. Same are the options, but what is interesting here is you don't have the 5th button. You don't have the traction control button. These still do have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. The AC still is quite cold. But you'll notice that the cheaper Trailblazer actually has more options down here. So this button, instead of being over here where the snowflake is, it's moved. Then you have traction control as a physical button. You have race mode in your front wheel drive 3-cylinder Trailblazer. I wish there was a Trailblazer SS like the good old days. And then you have snow mode, which probably just changes the transmission tuning to make this a little bit softer of a vehicle. And then you have about the same camera quality, same parking brake, same cup holders basically, and very similar storage, but this one comes with a lifty tray as a free option, which I like. And then do we have LEDs or incandescents? Oh, more incandescents. So, all right guys, let's turn this off and hop into the back of the Trax. I just realized I forgot to show you guys this, but the headlights are literally the exact same between these two models. Kind of fun. Anyways, getting into the backseat of the Trax, I think you'll be surprised if you haven't been in one of these for being a compact, subcompact type of little hatch car. There's a lot of room. Door panel, it opens up pretty good. I always wish car doors opened up a little bit closer to 90 degrees, so it'd be easier to get kids, their child safety seats, and pet kennels in here, and any other large, strange items. But it opens up enough. Plus, because you have all the cheaper Chevy materials that are built for durability and to last a long time and to not get scratched up by the kids and your pets and stuff, you really don't have to worry about it if you scuff them up a little bit. At least that's my opinion on it. I know you might not feel like that when it's a brand new car, but if the door eventually doesn't seem to open enough, you're gonna be thankful that the materials are tough and that they're not high-end, easy to, deform type of materials. But the seat, it's pretty nice. It's kind of interesting. You have the spot where you could lay down the buckles. You have the child safety anchors on the front, the 2 of them. The bench actually looks pretty good. Even with this seat further back than I would normally drive, that's how much knee room I have. Not bad. I can even kick out a little bit, relax, take it easy. Other than I can't feel any vents on down here, and there's nothing here, but I can actually feel them pretty decently through there, so that's good. Otherwise, no armrest. You have that cargo tray, the privacy tray. It kind of blocks your ability to grab stuff, so you might want to unclip it if that matters to you. You have another light that needs to be upgraded. And then overall, honestly, for being a black interior, it's actually pretty nice. The window is still pretty big. You even have this little baby-sized window back here. And I have a lot of headroom for this having what seems to be the lower roofline. It's really not bad at 5'11". And then coming around to the back seat of the Trailblazer, after this, we will wrap the video up. I would say the door panel probably opens to about the same angle. It's probably the same hinge, I'm sure. Door panel materials look about the same. Very durable. The back seats, I think size looks pretty similar for the back of this car too. The headrest clears the backrest of the seat, even with it being a little bit further forward. You will notice that that had leather seats and the back of those felt really secure, so I don't think you're gonna scratch through that. I think the quality of the material is really good. But hopping inside, I'm still 5'11", and how do I fit? I know it looks a little bit tighter in here. I feel like I have about the same amount of headroom actually. It doesn't actually feel like it's more, so maybe the seat is up a little bit higher. I don't feel any vents under the seat. I don't have any plugins or anything on this, but remember, this is the base model. No armrest, nothing to fold down. It also doesn't have the privacy shade, which I'm totally fine with. I love being able to just reach back there, or if you have a dog back there, it's easy for the dog to look around and to see you and to feed it treats and stuff. Just don't do that while you're also the driver. Anyways, it's nice. You have the knee airbag, right? Yep, we have the knee airbag on this one. We have the B-pillar airbag. So the Chevy, it cares about your safety. And with that said, let me hop out and we'll finish this video up. My final thoughts of the 2026 Trailblazer and the Trax. As I am pretty glad that Chevrolet offers both of these vehicles, I think they are both really good options, but there is a little bit more than meets the eye. It's not just the front fascia that looks different. There are differences in their options. Remember, the Trailblazer is a little bit bigger. It has more engine options. It has all-wheel drive if you want it. It could be loaded out more than the Trax. So it does seem to have a little bit more upscale options, even on the base model, like having the sport mode, the winter mode, the traction control button, compared to the Trax that only has the software to control traction and it doesn't have other drive modes. It is kind of interesting. You guys also saw that the 1.3 liter, even with the CVT, is almost 2 seconds faster 0 to 60 than the Trax. That surprised me. That's pretty interesting. But they both have about the same amount of safety features. If we go trim level for trim level, of course the Trailblazer is a little bit lower than the Trax because the Trax is an LT and this is an LS if you know your Chevys. But they offer a lot. They both look really good, and I'm so glad that they are options that you can choose from. So comment below. Let me know, which one would you buy? Which one have you owned? Do you like it? Do you wish you bought the other one? Especially now that the base models are about the same price. Let me know all of those details and more. Let's have a discussion down below. But if you get anything out of this video today, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions as mentioned. Subscribe if you haven't already and you want to watch more stuff like this. But again, huge thanks to both the Twin Falls Chevrolet in Southern Idaho. They are a phenomenal dealership, but also our sponsor today, Lasfit. Check them out, use my code, get a fantastic deal on a set of floor mats, some LED upgraded light bulbs, which we know that these vehicles need, or a truck bed mat. You could also shop around for your other vehicles. They offer a lot of different options. And with that said, I wish you guys the best. I hope you take care, and until next time, see ya.